Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Turkey For. This time, the passenger. Yeah, the passenger. Hey, be a passenger on our journey. Go to patreon.com/IBD and get on board with all the bonus stuff. Don't take much to become a supporter there. Do not. Now, I don't know why I'm using bad English. That has nothing to do with this episode. The episode is from DS9. It's the passenger on It's All Been Turkey.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Shrek Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
I wasn't ready.
And Jimmy Jerome.
Okay.
Thank you, I wasn't ready. Keith is here.
No.
First impressions on the Deep Space Nine episode, The Passenger.
At the time I was watching it, I enjoyed it. That was earlier today. And now after we went through the discussion about Birthright, I'm just questioning everything. Did I really like it?
Well, we watched Birthright last week.
Yeah. And, you know.
Why is that coming back in your head a week after a week?
Maybe one of our brains hopped into your brain, and so
probably
fighting it out there.
All right. Well, since you introduced that into evidence, I will say that I recall during the last discussion when I said the Freaky Friday thing, I almost made an allusion to this episode.
Yeah, this episode was fine. I liked it. The mystery seemed a little thin, but that's okay.
Yeah, it was okay. It was the second straight week of discussing body hopping, or 2 weeks ago was.
Right.
The last DS9 episode we did was that. Sorry.
Wow.
As I was watching it, I'm like, this first season of DS9 is really not bad. It's better than the first season of Next Gen. But then as I'm thinking back this episode, I'm like, I don't know why necessarily I felt that way, because it's kind of
Atlantic Classic Comics. They ranked all 173 episodes of Deep Space Nine, and this was 173.
Wow.
And
What?
Green Rant ranked it one of the 10 worst episodes of DS9. So
wow.
I don't think I even want to rank it last so far of the
that's what
8
I was
episodes
thinking. Like, I'm not going to hold a parade for it, but I also was like, this is terrible.
Their opinions don't matter in our rankings. Let's not let them influence.
Too late. I'm already questioning everything.
We started out with Bashir and Kira in a shuttle. This is the very worst Bashir has ever been, and that's saying something. 45 seconds into the episode, I went ahead and wrote him down for most annoying character in this episode. 45 seconds.
The only positive of that is the look on Kira's face of like, do you hear yourself?
Well, the Kira trying to compliment him, which she'll never do again.
Right.
That's not true. She will compliment him again, but if I were her, I don't think I ever would.
No, but
He's
that
so
part
full
of
of
it
himself.
I enjoyed. But yeah.
Well, and the total lack of awareness of what he is. Like, when she is sarcastic back at him, he just takes it as a compliment.
Love it.
In the 24th century, tech is still very fallible.
That's true.
Because the tricorder said he was dead, but he wasn't.
Yeah. I just for you guys, I have another thought on the theme song this week. It would be great as an Olympic theme, like for the Olympics. It sounds like an Olympic theme, or really a sports theme, but I don't think it'd be like football or basketball, but something, like I said, it's more like the Olympics or whatever. The majesty of these 2024 Olympics here in Los Angeles, or wherever those are going to be. But anyway.
Okay. But even before we get to the theme song, we have the rescue mission where Kira and Bashir beam over.
Yeah.
And they, Ty Kajata, played by Julie Caitlin Brown, best known for Babylon 5, which is, the DS9 competitor, basically.
Yeah.
Thoughts of a suicide on an otherwise lovely day, and then a one-episode part in Next Gen, and then this role. She only has 25 credits on IMDb, so really not much at all, but 23 episodes of Babylon 5, so that's a big... She was in, her Next Gen two-parter, it's a two-parter, and it hasn't happened yet, so we haven't seen her Next Gen yet, but she will be there. Right. But she's basically like, you gotta be careful. You can't trust this guy's dead. They're like, he's definitely dead. They're like, no, you can't trust him. Don't rescue him. And she's talking about Vantika, played by James Harper, who is best known for Armageddon, StarCraft, and StarCraft 2. Well, multiple StarCraft 2 credits. So he's got 64 credits. He really hasn't done anything since StarCraft, even though it says he's still alive. But
just the video game, right? They didn't make an adaptation of it, did they?
No, the video game.
I was going to right. So
it's only Trek.
I just want to go back to the cold open for a moment and say that I kind of appreciated that kind of thing where they are clearly introducing a concept or the sort of introducing the theme for the episode, which is the the unreliability of technology, or needing to be more familiar with the nuances of things, and especially when it comes to determining if something is dead or someone, I suppose. And just, I don't know, your mention of that, when you're saying it, it does sound like, oh God, we're just going to go through this argument. But something about the way this was playing out, I found it kind of intriguing, or at least fun to kind of go along with. I would say that the parts that seemed like they might be like over the top or a little too much were still kind of entertaining to me, or kind of in a sort of like a funny way. That's just the idea of having this character who is, giving them all these seemingly outlandish statements until she elaborates. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Maybe there might be something to this.
Yeah, she still seems paranoid to me, even with her explanations.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's the fun of it to me.
Paranoid in that we already know she's going to be right, even though it sounds paranoid. She very much felt to me, and granted, I've only seen like a movie or two from the series because I'm not a horror fan, but I was like, this is Jamie Lee Curtis, and Mike Myers is there on the floor, and she insists that he's still alive, and everybody's like, no, he's dead, but he's going to come back and kill some more people. And that's my alternate episode. They truly did this as a crossover with Halloween, and they find Mike Myers and Jamie Lee Curtis, and they're part of the story. And then you could reference the Kirk mask, and then he could replace it with a Cisco mask.
Oh my God.
It'd be so good.
Wait, but I just want to say that you put your finger on exactly why I enjoyed this. I couldn't even think of it, and that is why that kind of thing in the horror movie.
That it's Halloween, essentially.
That always amuses me.
Yeah,
and not the first Halloween. This is at least Halloween 3 or 4, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen all those movies, but the fact that he's already like come back, it's definitely not the first movie in the series.
Right.
I think I'm gonna contradict myself here, but what else is new? Because I love Halloween, and I love the first Halloween movie. The other ones, and I love that in that movie they really don't have a good explanation for it. It's just like, and it's a horror movie. That's the way it should be. And it's just like he's evil or whatever, and all that. But here, when she's like, "Hey, you don't want to mess with him," he's not dead. Give us why? Explain to us why, instead of just saying, "I know he's alive." Okay, I understand that, but can you tell us some more? I know he's alive. No, you said that. We get that part. But give us a reason to believe.
It's because she wasn't Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis could have convinced us. They should have cast JamieLee Curtis in the role.
She did eventually, though. I mean,
she does eventually, my alternate title of the episode was Codependence, because I thought there was that element of, she's like, I've been tracking him for 50 years. He's kind of a genius and all that. I'm like, okay.
Honestly, that's where I thought the story was going, was just somebody that couldn't let go. And that would have been a great alternate episode as well.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that would have been more interesting.
What if Ahab had caught Moby Dick and then still was obsessed with not believing that he had caught him? Like, oh, there's another Moby Dick out there. It's like, dude, you already got him. It's fine.
And maybe part of her thing was that she was so straight and clear with Bashir, like, do not go in there. And then all of a sudden, whenever Bashir or Crusher let the Hippocratic Oath get in the way, like, no, I got to do this. I did an oath. It's like, all right, bad things are going to happen. You should have listened to me. So the way Bashir fought to get in there, even while Ty Kajada is saying, no, whatever you do, don't do that. So we were at a friend's house. This is a long time ago. And he's like, hey, he had a roommate. He's like, whatever you do, don't go in this room. He's got all these items in there, like that,
It was a sex dungeon, right?
Yeah, well, no.
Or something more embarrassing.
But it was like model airplane stuff.
So something more embarrassing. I was right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And so he was. He's like, do not go down there.
Like,
we'll stay on this side of the house, whatever. So one of our, there's drinking going on, and one of our buddies wakes up.
Oh no!
And decides he's got to throw up.
Oh
and
no!
Everyone's like, other way, other way. He goes right to the door for this thing, and he can't get in at first. He's fumbling with the door, but he's fighting to get in there. And that's all I could think of when Bashir was doing it, with her being like, don't do it. And he's like, oh, I'm not. It's so hard to get in here, but I'm going to get in there. And so.
Did they stop him? I mean.
No, we didn't. We failed there too.
Oh, man.
I was just teasing out the embarrassing thing, whether your thing's model airplanes or sex dungeons. All for whatever your interest is.
We're not kink shaming.
My understanding was that whether it's embarrassing or not, the person cares about these things. They're probably delicate. You don't want to go fumbling around.
You care about it. Don't be embarrassed.
I think we thought he wasn't ever going to figure it out. And then all of a sudden he did. And he essentially, my understanding is he projectile vomited in there. And I could not have helped with that. So I just stayed away.
Man.
So don't projectile vomit around.
Well, the other thing that struck me in this beginning is one of the characters actually calls the station DS9 instead of Deep Space Nine. And I know, fans have always called it DS9 as a shorthand, but it's fun that it's actually in canon that they call it DS9, even though it doesn't actually save them DS, Deep Space. It doesn't save them any time. You might as well just say the whole words, but still, it was fun.
Well, in my experience, the P's and the SP's and everything, especially when you're on the microphones, it's a little harder to get through. So
that's a fair point. I just mean in terms of, they're both one syllables.
Right.
Yeah. So when we get to the station, Odo and Quark are discussing Dax. That was an interesting discussion. Definitely doesn't pass the Bechdel test. Also, a little bit creepy. But I did appreciate the Quark saying, Odo, it's good to want things. And he's like, something like, especially things what about things you can't have? Especially things you can't have.
Yeah.
I wrote that
That's
down
definitely
too.
a DS9 meme where they always do the especially thing on social media.
They
I wrote
do
that down too. It is a positive thing. I mean, like, you can take it to its extreme limits of like capitalism or whatever, of really wanting something, but it's good to aspire to things.
Yes, I agree.
Which is what I think. This is the way I took it.
Oh, absolutely. And Keith, in answer to your question about the memes, if you haven't seen them, they're usually Bashir and Garrick, and he'll be like, "Oh, doctor, like this is shady." I can't even think of a good example, but like everybody, maybe Bashir says everybody's or Garrick says everybody's bisexual, and Garrick's like, or Bashir's like, even the straight people. He's like, especially the straight people, stuff like that.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of them, but it's usually Bashir. But I feel like they took this from there, and now I'm surprised that it's always Bashir and Garrick, because Odo and Quark could be equally good.
But yeah, continuing with what Stephen was saying, there certainly are problematic examples of especially wanting a woman that you can't have. And
that can go the wrong way.
It depends how you deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, but there are extremes. And even Quark's creepiness about it seems almost wholesome in this context, I would say.
I mean, compared to Bashir, Quark is a monk, so in terms of how he treats women. But not real. I feel like as the series goes on, Quark's the bigger problem, but at the moment it's Bashir.
Going on with a duty or a quest, like I think this is what Quark seems to be implying of Odo. Living only for duty is going to rob you of that kind of will to live eventually.
Life-work balance is really what he's getting.
There's no such thing back then, of course.
I thought.
Well, it starts like you live where you work, and you're, Yeah.
Speaking of Bashir, and maybe I'm not being creepy, but Kajada gets right in his face, and I was like, "Are they going to make out?" Because they got real close to each other. I'm like, "What is going?" I was like, "Where is this episode going?" And then that was it.
It's I can't pull up a good frame of reference in my head right now for more modern day cinematography and so on, but I feel like there's a lot of that kind of thing in like the Star Trek shows we're watching right now. Even just the way they frame shots like that sometimes, or that kind of stilted kind of thing where I am confronting you and I'm here in your face doing this thing, and it feels like, are they gonna just where did
I mean
going with that?
2 years later, Seinfeld is like he's a close talker. A lot of these people are close talkers.
Yep.
Odo's telling Quark about this shipment, and he's framing it as a warning to Quark, but the lieutenant that shows up, Lieutenant George Primmin, does not agree. Lieutenant George Primmin is played by James Lashley, best known for Howard the Duck, Domestic Disturbance, White Oleander, and the movie Wild Wild West in the 90s. 68 credits. The last one was over 10 years ago, but it looks like he's probably still alive. It actually plays this role. He was a different character in an episode Next Generation, the episode Brothers. He was another ensign, and he was in Seinfeld. We probably already talked about him back then. He was in The Baby Shower. He was assistant.
Oh yeah.
But this is a 2-episode role this week and next DS9 episode, because Cole Meany was filming a movie, so they replaced him with Primmin as like another character to bounce things off of. But it's a little frustrating because I kind of like the character, even though he had a rough start. And I kind of wish he'd stuck around, but I do see how he might be a little too similar to O'Brien to keep him. in season 3, they do bring in a character that essentially serves the same role. That's a Starfleet security officer that clashes with Odo. And I kind of wish they just brought Perman back or expanded upon it here. But still, he had a bad first impression, but I ended up liking the character. And I get why he is frustrated with Odo right there, even though I don't think Odo's in the wrong.
I agree. And I thought that actually was an interesting concept of you're both right. And
yeah.
I think he had a point that Odo probably shouldn't have done it in a public place because other people could overhear, whereas Odo could have warned Quark privately. It would have been a little more responsible. But the fact that Odo warned Quark was his one of his problems, and that was the right thing to do in Odo's opinion, and Odo knows what he's doing. I mean, as Sisko says, like, I need you. We'll get to that in a minute, but Sisko dresses down Perman for messing with Odo here.
Yeah, I really liked that the way that scene played out, because honestly, I hadn't really considered either of those points until they kind of walked me through it. Because sometimes I'm sort of on autopilot there, but
I really appreciate they followed up with Perman apologizing to Odo and Odo graciously accepting.
That too. That I really appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah.
But a good example of like them showing Starfleet ideals actually playing out the way the characters are supposed to be using them. But just Sisko's bearing through that entire thing. I just love the way that played out, and because I feel like I've probably been all three of those people at some point. Seeing something like that coming in and going and applying a certain kind of logic to it, like, why are they doing it this way? Because blah blah blah. And there's just certain situational things like that you wouldn't know. And Sisko also incorporated the point that people probably know already anyway. Mm-hmm. But this is a deterrent in the sense that we know that people know we're watching. So,
and you can make that same argument that Odo did it in public so that more people know that he's watching too.
Right.
Yeah, and I did like I did grow to like Lieutenant Perman, but I did like Sisko's dressing him down. Also, that was
it was fair. Yeah, but Perman took it well. Perman took it well and professionally. So that's why we ended up liking him. He could have easily been the Commodore type character this episode, and I'm so glad he wasn't.
Yeah, and the fact that he had a Southern accent made it feel like, okay, he's supposed to be like the Southern cop kind of thing. But then he wasn't, and that was
he wasn't.
Yeah,
yeah, and I don't mean to besmirch all Southern cops.
No, but you could easily see it falling into the stereotype of the racist that comes down and looks down on the alien that's doing the job because he's not Starfleet.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, that we're going to assume that something happened, was purging the system. Jakata says, "Yeah, he did this." Or Kajata says, "Yeah, he did this." I keep forgetting. Ventika did this previously, so it's definitely him. Odo and Perman have a moment where they jinx because they say the same thing at the same time, but then Perman backs down, and then we just have to assume Vanika's alive. So early in the episode, we're going to go ahead and get the Starfleet on board, which, again, I kind of like the lack. As much as you like conflict, the lack of conflict sometimes is refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of my point about the way that whole play. I enjoyed the way that the way things were running. It didn't feel like they were forcing conflict where there didn't need to be. It was brought up enough to show that it could be dealt with in a certain way without derailing the larger plot of the episode. Yeah. The thing about the database being discovered, that I was also relieved that it didn't turn into, see, I was right, Odo doesn't know what he's doing, that kind of thing. They got to the next scene, we could see that everyone was equally like, how the hell would this happen? This isn't possible.
Yeah, I think I'm liking this episode more as we talk about it, the reverse of last week, where I liked it less as we talked about it. But I will say, it seems like a good time to talk about who wrote this mess. Not mess, because we're being complimentary about what's happening. It's just a common phrase I use of who dealt the. Never mind. Like you play cards, who dealt this mess. Anyway,
it was DC Fontana's new alias, probably her new pen name.
No, story by Morgan Gendel. Teleplay by Morgan Gendel, Robert Hewitt Wolf, Michael Piller. Robert Hewitt Wolf was a writer for Next Gen and DS9, eventually became a producer of DS9. Michael Piller was showrunner, creator of DS9 with Rick Berman. And Morgan Gendel wrote one other episode of Star Trek before this. It was The Inner Light for The Next Generation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He will do a second episode each of Next Gen and DS9, as well as some Tech War TV movies and episodes.
I would say most of those names sound made up. I mean, any of those could easily be DC Fontana.
Yeah. I mean, I just made them all up right on the spot. The actual writer. No, I'm kidding.
You clearly. I mean, there were times when you really could have done it, and I would not know any differently. So, I mean, like every time.
The actual writer is Schmoopy McSchmooperson. That's not a made-up name.
All right, that's. I'm a little bit more incredulous about that one for some reason.
The actual writer's name is Shmisi Schmontana.
Okay, that's better. Yeah.
So Kira, we find out Kira is the one that nicknamed Odo Constable as an expression of affection, and they've all picked it up because we find out at this point that Odo kind of thinks it's a slight, and it's nice to get that clarification that no, it's not a slight. We're all saying this because we like and respect you. That is a good example of conflict in between the characters there. But he takes it a little too far when he's like, well, I'm going to resign now because I'm tired of you making fun of me, and I'm tired of you putting this Starfleet first. And thankfully, Cisco, tells him, like, no, you're in charge. So when Quark cleans his bar, that just means he looks for loot that's dropped?
Yeah. Speaking of this, I keep saying how much I'm obviously a fan of casinos. Casinos don't close. I don't think his place will ever be closed.
Unless Cisco orders it closed to hold something there, which happens all the time for some reason. No, we just have something. Just had that trial there, huh?
Unless Cisco closes it to hold Jimmy in stasis,
right?
Something your picture froze for just a moment.
Just had the episode where Odo's like, "Oh, Quark, you have to close for us." Hey, Quark volunteered his place. Which is just cruel. But you're right. I don't think they should close either. Maybe they close for 30 minutes a day just to pick up the coins or whatever. But it won't be the last time we see it close. I guess Quark is too micromanagey to keep it open when he's not actually behind the bar.
Yeah, I mean, that's just plausible.
Quark is working with Antika, which was both surprising and disappointing to me. Like, I know he's a criminal, but this seems like a big crime to commit.
Yeah. I think sometimes you kind of need to have something legitimate. Some legitimate wrongdoing to justify that bad boy image of whatever's happening there. You want. I mean, Quark does need to do something that is at least gray market, in some sense, or all the way black market, whatever, to justify that kind of I'm such a criminal mastermind, or I have my hands in everything. We have to see some legitimate examples of that at some point.
Yeah, he was just a little more involved than I'd like him to be because he never gets caught. So I would have liked to have not be meeting with the guys in the shady bar. I would have rather it be more like I pass some messages along.
Gotcha.
The scene where Vantika grabs Quark and he's like, "I told you, blah blah blah." That made sense. That was fine. I don't think I wanted to see the shady meeting though, especially that the bar was open. That Kajana could just sneak in on the balcony.
Mm-hmm.
And observe them. I think Quark's more careful than that. If he wasn't, Odo would have caught him a long time ago. Odo shapeshifts. He's got to check the whole bar for any coin that wasn't there before or whatever.
I felt that way too. Just that whole thing just didn't feel right.
So I mentioned earlier that technology is still fallible. Yet here's something else that's still happening in the 24th century. People are still not lifting with their back, even with anti-grav units.
I enjoyed that.
Are still lifting with their back. I mean, stay keeping their back straight.
Yeah.
So when we find out Vatica could have transferred his consciousness, Kajado was obviously their first suspect.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we're all saying, that's too obvious. It's not her. To my mind, I get that when we under the fingernail thing, that it was definitely Bashir because he touched him. But I honestly, forgetting who the person was, I thought it would be Kira because they mentioned at one point, the only people that have the command codes are Odo, Primin, Cisco, and Kira. And I'm like, so it's Kira. But the Ventica didn't have the command codes. So
I wrote, as soon as it was revealed to be Bashir, the same thing I said last week. Who else but Bashir?
I mean, I feel like Primin was the other obvious one, even though your question is how would it get to Primin?
Right.
Yeah.
But we didn't understand we didn't even know what was going on.
But I just didn't even really bother to question that it wasn't Kajada. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It made sense. It seemed to be happening. I was like, well, all right. And I didn't think there was a swerve was even necessary. So once that happened, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, all right.
Dax makes the comment as they're discussing this that someone else is along for the ride. And I'm like, oh, you mean like they're a passenger? You didn't want to say the name of the episode?
Yes.
She comes so close without saying it.
And some of those are good. I kind of like that. I mean, they haven't said birthright in TNG yet, I don't think, right?
Well, No, but it was just the way that she came so close. Like, it was such a synonym to what we were talking about. Like, she gave the definition of a passenger. And we also got a great exchange after that where Kajada's like talking to Odo, what kind of fool are you? And he's like, my own special kind.
Yes.
There's some good lines in this.
Yeah.
You can tell it's the writer of the inner light. I did wonder how Kajada fell off. Was she pushed? And I guess we're supposed to assume that Bashir did push her off.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
But then Quark, as she's being checked out, Quark very obviously lies about being alone. And as soon as she wakes up again, she's just going to say, no, he was meeting with these other guys. Like, that is, again, just so obvious. It makes no sense that Quark isn't caught in this episode, honestly. Yeah. Even if Bashir doesn't remember later. Dax is a genius, which is great because we hadn't really gotten to see that in the series yet. I mean, we'll get a lot more examples later, but she really is a genius in figuring out this episode.
Yeah, and I thought she and Bashir were, at some point, they were like, oh, and this is what's going on. But Bashir, I guess Bashir was actually undermining her, I guess, in hindsight. But
I'm not sure he was, because I think he was oblivious that he was Vatika when he was Bashir, right?
Oh, that's right. You're right. I think that makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did appreciate when Dax is like, all this technobabble, and Sisko's like, yeah, I always wondered that technobabble that he clearly had never heard of before.
I think they did a decent job of just establishing the rules of things as they went. I mean, as far as
was Bashir Vatika the whole time? Was he not Bashir from the time he got strangled all the way till the end?
Possibly.
Because if not, that would explain why Bashir was not annoying and creepy in this episode after the first scene.
Well, wasn't the idea there was a battle going on in there?
I guess it was that was a little unclear to me, honestly.
Yeah.
Primin disobeys Odo because he takes initiative and follows up an idea Odo had earlier. And I feel like you got to trust your people. Don't micromanage them. Let them make those intuitive leaps. And he did it. And when Odo catches him, he does it in such Primin is so respectful about what he was doing and why that Odo has no choice but to be like, oh, okay, then. And again, it really makes me sad Primin's only in a second episode. I want more.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be a lead, but like make him like the O'Brien of TNG to DS9,
Yeah. Well, it could still happen. We'll see.
No, I already told you IMDb says he was only in 2 episodes.
Well, all right, no point.
Sorry, Keith.
I guess we can kind of skip to Voyager now. Was it
Keith, would it help if I mind melded with you and told you to forget?
Forget. As long as you put it back later, it'll be fine. Or the bit with Odo saying, she's going to figure out eventually. When she does, send her to me.
Yes,
it reinforces what I liked. I mean, what Sisko was saying, what he liked about Odo's characters, in essence, was just that it's refreshing to have someone who is that straightforward, who doesn't mind just having conflicts of that nature and just calmly just shutting them down. Just, this is what's happening. I don't care. And just a really good poker face about it. He could play something off like that and just let it go. So, yeah.
No, I agree with you. When Dax figures out that it's Bashir, she doesn't call Sisko. She checks a whole bunch of stuff herself and then leisurely makes her way up to Ops so that she can deliver the line at the moment where everybody else is figuring out, yeah, it's Bashir. He's Svatika. Seriously, wouldn't she just, as soon as she finds the comm badge, Dax to Sisko, guess what?
Mm-hmm. You went all the way to the bridge and then told them to meet me over? Or went to Ops and then told me? Why didn't she just do it right away? Well, did you want to make it this big scene and that everyone knew how smart you were?
Well, and Dax even says, I've looked everywhere. I can't find him. So not only does she she doesn't go straight to Ops to tell him, even if she wanted to tell him in person. She's looking for him, and she doesn't tell anybody else.
Yep.
I mean, we should have had a montage of her just like looking in a cabinet, looking under the bed.
Well, I mean, if you have...
and then going,
They establish that it's not safe to tell the person, the host that they're onto them. So how do you know who's with them and when you figure them? Yeah,
it's just the one. It's just the one person that's been taken over. It's just the one person that's been taken over.
Right.
What do you mean? Who else is with them?
Okay, you know those scenes where they're like in a car and they have the cell phone. They're like, don't react to what I'm about to tell you.
Oh, I see. So you think Bashir could be? She might think Bashir is in Ops when she calls Sisko.
Yes.
Couldn't she just say, "Hey, Sisko, are you alone? I've got something personal to tell you."
Again, that's I don't know.
They're right behind me, aren't they?
If she had said, I've got something personal to tell you. Anyway. So Vatica does the same trick he does earlier. We're supposed to believe this guy's a super genius that always evades capture, but he does the same trick he does earlier when Primman finds it. He has no backup plan and has to improvise with a suicide bluff. Like, I get that the suicide bluff works, but it definitely seemed like he was thinking that in the moment. And I feel like a guy that smart would have more than one plan, especially when it was the plan they already caught him doing earlier.
Yeah, and why?
That's where I started to feel it was weak.
At the beginning, when he's choking Bashir and just driving all the people on the fanzines crazy back then, why wouldn't he go with the opposite route of kindness and like, oh, thank you, good sir, I'm this very good person who happens to be a genius. This crazy woman has imprisoned me, and then get in his brain. But
yeah,
I mean, when I'm conning people, that's what I do. But Vanica, you do you.
It occurred to me as Dax was talking about the multiple brainwave neural patterns that Trill probably have some experience in that regard.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Bashir has the worst headache ever. I kind of feel like he deserves it.
Yeah.
Wow.
He could use some humiliation, and that's what I wrote down at the end. Like, that character needs some humiliation to knock him down off of where he is.
Oh.
Dax beams Vatica into essentially the same device they locked Moriarty in, right? The holographic pattern.
Oh,
but then they're just like, Kajada's like, is he mine now? They're like, yeah. And she's like, okay, execution. Nobody protests. Yeah. Nobody's like, what are you doing? Well, don't kill him on our station. They're just like, cool. She killed him. That felt very un-Starfleet and
I agree. And when
that ending, the ending is what frustrated me about this episode.
And when you think that maybe Vanica hopped into that brain and got rid, and then Vanica's taken over Kajada.
That's the twist at the end. Is she walks out and she's limping, and then she stops limping, and it's Kaiser Sose.
Now we're back to a Halloween scenario or whatever. That's how he keeps going. But
yeah, I mean, when Vanica's in Bashir, you'd think he'd make another backup plan. That's just the thing. Like, yeah.
There's a Rigel 7 reference here, which I always enjoy. That is the planet from the cage or the menagerie, whichever you prefer. The events of the cage happen right after the events on Rigel 7. And then the Telosians end up putting him right back there, and he's defending Vina or whatever character she's playing there, Susan Oliver. So, and it's also one of my favorite matte paintings. Often seen in the credits. So whenever I hear Rigel 7, I'm like, ooh, my interest is piqued. So,
well, you'll be happy to know, you probably won't catch this unless I tell you, that in 3 later episodes of Deep Space Nine, they have in the Promenade and Replimat, you'll see an advertisement, visit the spectacular castles of Rigel 7.
No way.
Yep.
What was the reference in this episode?
He had previously purged the systems in Rigel 7.
Yeah. Vantika did the exact same thing on Rigel 7.
Who was your shady character of the episode?
Kajada, because she wouldn't. I thought she should have said earlier, like, this is how this guy works, instead of just letting it play out.
I thought you had to go with Vantika, personally.
He's my annoying. I didn't care for him.
Well, we're not on annoying yet. Hold it.
Sorry.
The mercenaries.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in that logic, you could have chose Quark, but, yeah.
I was thinking about that, too, honestly. And, maybe he deserves it this time, actually. Quark. It's because it's probably rarely going to happen for the reasons I was saying. It's just every now and then you have to throw in something bad to legitimate. I'm saying. So
annoyances. Steven chose Vantika. I actually thought he was a less annoying version of Bashir when he was Vantika, and nothing is ever gonna. I told you 45 seconds into the episode, I already put Bashir down as my annoyance, and I have to keep it because that opening scene was the most annoying Bashir.
He's terrible. He is
ever has been, and I think ever will be. Hopefully. Yeah. I think we're about past this era of terrible Bashir.
That's good.
I like the character later, I promise. He doesn't take him 5 seasons like Geordi to be less annoying. Although he's always got a bit of an ego. Anyway, Keith, who was your annoyance?
You talked me into it, Bashir, I would say. I mean, I'm usually reluctant to choose him, but I think even for that bit, I kind of thought that was funny. Or at least, admiring some of the straightforwardness again. But, yeah.
And who are you having a drink with?
Kajada. She's shady, but so am I.
Dax, she's a genius, and I'm with Quark on that one, whether she's attainable or not. I just want to hang out with her. She seems cool. I'd be her friend.
Oh, sorry. I did have an honored episode, which was the adventures on the Duridium ship. And I was very disappointed once we got there, because I think I wrote this before we actually got to the Duridium ship. they should have a lot more security if that stuff is that vital. And it's just 3 people, and they're like, boop, boop, boop. All right, we have the ship. It seems like they should have more weapons, more everything, and more security everywhere on that. But
Starfleet Runabout coming out to meet you wasn't the plan. Question it before you lower your shields.
Yeah.
Keith, who are you having a drink with?
Probably Kajada. I would be willing to believe her. That's what I would say.
I was not interested in spending any more time with Kajada. Ranking the episode, better or worse than Dax. I'm going to go above because other than kind of a screwed up ending, I thought this was pretty fun romp. And I actually liked, even though I don't like horror, I like the Halloween aspects. And some great one-liners in this episode. So good.
Yeah.
So Keith and I are going above Dax. Steven, are you with us or no?
I don't think I am, but that's okay.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. But I might change my mind on the next stop. We'll see.
Well, would you go below A Man Alone? That's the next one down.
Yeah, I think I would.
You go below that?
I think so.
Okay, below that's
are we going the other way?
We're going down. We're seeing how far down you want to go.
Sorry. Yeah, I think I probably would.
You go below, okay. Below that's past prologue. Kira's old resistance buddy.
I think I'd stop there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's only 8 episodes so far, so you put it number 5. Okay.
Okay.
Keith, we're going up. After Dax, above Dax is Babel.
Probably above.
I think I'm with you there. I think I'm with you. Above that's Emissary.
Nope.
Yeah, that's where I am as well. So we're putting it number 2. Steven would have put it number 5 of 8. That's a pretty big difference at this stage of the season.
Yeah. Well, next week we have to rank whatever it is, number 7. So
it could be 7 of 9.
Indeed.
Well, that'll be in 2 weeks. Because next week, back to the Enterprise D, Birthright Part 2. In seeking his father, Worf discovers a prisoner of war camp that has evolved into a Klingon-Romulan haven in Eden, where Worf becomes their serpent. So I guess that answers some questions we had about motivation.
Indeed.
And Troy is credit only next week. So, well. It doesn't look like Dr. Soong's back, which would confirm my theory that plot is over.
He and O'Brien must be filming the same movie together.
Well, Jake Sisko, Kirk Lofton might be there too, because he's been out the last 3 episodes in a row of Deep Space Nine. Anyway, until then, live long.
Bye, body hopping again, and prosper.
But don't get captured.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?